Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Balls and Strikes, brought to you by Americans for Good Government. I'm again here with Ken Buck, former congressman from Colorado. Ken, good to see you today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Gary. I'm running around with my head chopped off, but I am doing great. Just a lot of errands to
Yeah,
do.
one story I've been following a lot is uh, the Paramount merger with Warner Brothers, and the fear going through CNN right now that Paramount might try to do with CNN what they're made some effort. I don't really see the big effort that a lot of people do with CBS to make CBS more centrist and less liberal. And so as this happens, as you know, this I think about Nick Shirley, but I think about what are the chances where the people with the real big megaphones, the CNNs, the CBSs, the broadcast networks, the New York Times, the Washington Post, as far astray as they've gone, they still have those megaphones. They can still set the news tone for the day. And I'm hoping that maybe some ownership groups, like maybe in Paramount, will bring back some balance into the what we call the mainstream media and begin to expose some of this stuff in better ways than instead of apologizing.
Yeah, I certainly have never been involved in media programming, but if you look at the most successful cable news organization, it's Fox by far. You have Newsmax over on the right, also very credible, very successful. And then you've got a bunch of left wingers that are their numbers are appalling and they continue to lose money. And for someone to come in and say, okay, CNN, we're going to try to move to the middle and we're going to try to capture some of this market. They had a great reputation 30, 40 years ago in the cable news industry, and they have just kept sliding further and further to the left. It is a good business decision in my mind, and it will also help keep the other left wing organizations, news organizations,
Yeah.
more honest.
Because I've been a journalist most of my life, I try to watch other networks to get different perspectives. I start my day, frankly, going on and logging on to see what the New York Times says this morning or the Post, and I go to Fox News and I'll watch some Fox and Friends and with my coffee in the morning, and I try to get a good across the board, feel for the news of the day. I feel if you watch a little bit of all of them, but it would be nice to have conservative. It's like when you see a panel show, Meet the Press or something like that. There's always a group of 5 or 6 people at the round table and one conservative, one lonely conservative trying to make that point against 4 or 5 clearly liberals who are ganged up on him. Just some basic balance beyond that seems like a common sense thing to do.
Yeah, it is unfortunate that so many folks live in silos. I do the same thing that you do, Gary. I look at 7 or 8 different news sources. I love Real Clear Politics because they actually have a liberal conservative viewpoint on a lot of different subjects right next to each other. And there are a lot of good news organizations out there that give you a good idea so that you're not living in a silo or an echo chamber. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, a lot of these organizations think they're going to get better advertisers or something if they represent a liberal viewpoint.
Yeah, they do. But I think that economic pendulum is starting to swing back a little bit. And that's why you've seen places like Paramount. I think the chief of Paramount announced he's going to actually host a dinner in honor of President Trump and invite CBS, White House correspondents to attend that. And I'm sure that sent them into shock. But I just think as a journalist, fairness in reporting. I don't want people, carrying even my political point of view. I just want the facts. I want the facts without vilifying the right, without trying to make a political point. Old-fashioned journalism, who, what, when, where, and why. We've gotten away from that, and to get back to that helps solve so many of these problems, Ken. Honest reporting on fraud, on government spending, would help bring these things under control.
It would, and rooting out corruption should be one of the fundamentals in journalism. I got a kick, Gary, out of reading when Doge was big with Elon Musk at the beginning of the Trump administration, the second Trump administration. All of these left-wing news organizations would have hypotheticals. And in fact, I saw a story just like 4 days ago, that said, well, the U.S. may run out of missiles. No authority for that.
Right.
Nobody from the Pentagon saying, our missile stockpile is low. It was just this conjecture. And then when Doge was cutting people, well, we may not be able to predict the next hurricane. We may not be able to is not news. That is conjecture. And it's the kind of conjecture that just gets people upset without any factual basis.
Yeah. Absolutely. I saw a story the other day on the New York Times coverage of, I believe it was the Heartland Institute, was having a climate-related meeting. This reporter, everything that she reported on a conservative saying at the climate meeting, she just called it, a lie, or basically called it false, falsely said. One speaker stood up and said, that cloud cover helps cool the earth. She said he falsely said that cloud cover cools the earth. Cloud cover does cool the earth. In fact, I actually went back and found a previous New York Times story, not like a month earlier, talking about how most cloud cover cools the earth. And yet she, this reporter who I looked up and couldn't see anywhere where she had any kind of a science degree or anything, she was a climate reporter, just took it upon herself to say this was false. Falsely. The worst thing is the media deciding themselves to be the voice of God and to call people liars. This started with when Trump came along the first time. They gave themselves permission. It used to be you had to go and get some third party to question something. So, and I'm all for calling out falsehoods when people say them, but it shouldn't be that journalist that using their own voice just calling people. That's one reason that mainstream media has an approval rating of down around 20%, even worse than Congress.
So I have to tell you, one of my favorite words, Gary, is debunked. I love debunked because
Debunked.
Some liberal reporter will just say, well, the conservative said this, but it's been debunked.
It's been debunked.
Just saying debunked means, well, it doesn't have credibility. I'm not going to tell you why it doesn't have credibility, but it doesn't have credibility, so we don't need to pay attention to that other point of view. And that's just unfortunate. And it is what we are faced with right now. On our side, we have people that call everything out and say it's false news, fake news. But the other side loves to use that word debunked.
Yeah.
And every time I hear that, my blood pressure just goes up a couple
I
points.
know, I agree with you completely. They throw that out. It's been debunked. But then they leave it at that. Well, and it's like the New York Times article I'm talking about. They threw out the line that said, the huge majority of scientists agree that climate change is, and I'm like, show me that list. They always say that, but I want to see that list of scientists that they're referring to. They never link to that. Well, Ken, listen, thank you for being again with us today. Americans for Good Government is fighting hard to do exactly this type of thing. Expose fraud, hold people accountable, tell the truth about government finance, about government waste, and so on, and keep fighting the good fight.
Gary, thanks for your great introduction for issues and your knowledge and keeping this conversation going. I love these. I look forward to the next one.
Same here. Thank you. See you next time, everyone.